Welcome to episode 226 of the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I'm Ashley Scott Myers, screenwriter and blogger over at sellingyourscreenplay.com. Today I'm interviewing writer-director Brad Silberling. He's done a number of high-profile films like City of Angels, A Series of Unfortunate Events, Moonlight Mile, and Casper. And he comes on the show to talk about his new film, An Ordinary Man, which stars Ben Kingsley. So stay tuned for that interview. If you find this episode valuable, please help me out by giving me a review in iTunes or leaving a comment on YouTube or retweeting the podcast on Twitter or liking or sharing it on Facebook. These social media shares really do help spread word about the podcast, so they're very much appreciated. Over at iTunes, I want to thank two people who left me some very nice reviews. Thank you to Lost It All and the Hong Kong Writer. Thank you both to you. It's really appreciated to see some people out there getting value out of the podcast. So I really appreciate you taking some time out to leave those nice reviews. If you have a minute, please do go to iTunes and leave some feedback. If there's a comment you want to make to me that you don't want it to be public, that's totally fine, and that's appreciated as well. Just email me at info@sellingyourscreenplay.com. Any and all feedback, as I said, is very much appreciated. These iTunes reviews really do help me out. It helps get the podcast listed in more places in iTunes so it reaches a broader audience. Also, if you subscribe to the podcast in iTunes, then you'll get the new episodes downloaded to your phone each week automatically. So that's a nice, convenient way to stay current on the podcast. Anyway, thanks again to Lost It All and the Hong Kong Writer. Again, those reviews are very, very much appreciated. Any websites or links that I mentioned in the podcast can be found on my blog in the show notes. I also publish a transcript with every episode in case you'd rather read the show or look at something later on. You can find all the podcast show notes at www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/podcast, and then just look for episode number 226. If you want my free guide, How to Sell a Screenplay in 5 Weeks, you can pick that up by going to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. It's completely free. You just put in your email address and I'll send you a new lesson once per week for 5 weeks along with a bunch of bonus lessons. I'll teach you the whole process of how to sell your screenplay in that guide. I'll teach you how to write a professional logline and query letter and how to find agents, managers, and producers who are looking for material. Really is everything you need to know to sell your screenplay. Just go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. So now let's get into the main segment. Today I am interviewing writer-director Brad Silberling. Here is the interview. Welcome, Brad, to the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I really appreciate you coming on the show with me today.
Thanks so much, Ashley. Happy to be here.
So to start out, maybe you can tell us a little bit about your background. Where did you grow up and how did you get interested in the entertainment business?
Sure. I am not a native Angelino, but as close as you get. My family moved out to Los Angeles when I was 3 years old. So I was a Valley kid, and I consider myself a Valley filmmaker. I started making Super 8 films back when I was 11 on the streets of Ventura Boulevard and in my neighborhood in Studio City. I'm not alone in that. My father was initially a documentary producer. The reason I was born in D.C. was he worked for the USIA, which is the U.S. Information Agency. It's a fancy title for really what is our own propaganda arm. And he was producing films about the presidency and about our government back during the Kennedy administration, and then moved out to L.A., of all things. I don't know how they had the wisdom in those days to make somebody transition from documentary work to network television, but he started working as a network executive in the 60s. He worked at ABC and then CBS. So I would just grab his raincoat or, on a sunny LA day, his tweed coat, and always want to go to set anytime. So by the time my earliest memories of visiting Paramount lot in particular, because my father's shows included the Mod Squad and the Brady Bunch, and he had all these shows at Paramount. So I was entranced by the world of set life and by specifically the storytelling life. But it was June of '75. I went first day to Century City, to the Plitt Theater. My dad was working at ABC upstairs, and I bugged him to take me in so I could go see the first screening of Jaws. And I walked out of the film wrecked, but also with the question, who specifically has that job? I just was, I just was entranced. I felt the storyteller's hand in every frame, and literally stole my father's movie camera from the closet that night and started making my short films. So I was making silent short films. He didn't have a sound head, all through my teens. And it was my father who wisely said, you know, honey, there's a lot of other nice boys out there who want to be directors. You're going to need to start writing. And so I didn't write my first screenplay until I was an undergrad, because I had essentially just been writing silent scenarios and making short films prior to that. Had an incredible writing mentor at UC Santa Barbara, a fellow named Paul Lazarus, who Scott was like 2 years ahead of me, Jeff Nathanson. There were a few, Zach Penn, a few great people who came just out of this quiet little class, that really kind of kick-started my love of screenwriting.
Yeah. So let's dig into An Ordinary Man, starring Ben Kingsley. Maybe to start out, you can give us a quick pitch or logline for that film.
Yeah, essentially, a man that we only meet as a general is being clearly moved, like a chess piece, hidden in plain sight. This is you don't know exactly where, but you feel Eastern Europe. It's actually Belgrade, Serbia. Clearly sort of in a post-war situation, a fugitive is being moved like a chess piece by loyalists, a dwindling number of loyalists, and finally placed in his own apartment. One gets a sense because he's such a pain in the ass. And he's alone, which is his own worst nightmare. And suddenly, second day in, keys in the door, young woman walks through the door with cleaning supplies and is clearly the maid of the prior tenant who got whisked out to make room for the general. And both because she clearly knows who he is, she essentially becomes a hostage. He would say that he's taking her into his employment. And it begins a sort of emotional cat and mouse game where he's trying to figure out who this young woman is. He's fascinated by her. And the twists and turns that ensue really are story. So it's a bit of a psychological drama, psychological character thriller with Kingsley and Hera Hilmar, leading to some pretty crashing revelations for both of them.
And where did this idea come from? What was sort of the genesis of it?
It's really it came from life, from actual real life, a bit of a composite. I took 3 films over the years to the Sarajevo Film Festival and really fell in love with the region. It's got scars, it's got tremendous beauty, Bosnia as well as Serbia as well as Croatia. And I, about 10 years ago, just in the New York Times one day on a slow news day, it almost read like a comedy. The Hague tribunals were beginning for war crimes, and Serbia, like other countries, they wanted to get into the EU, and the EU basically said, not until you bring in your fugitive war criminals, we're not going to admit you. So each of the countries was sort of trying to put on a show, and Serbia, at the tribunal, some loyalists for the fugitive general Ratko Mladic went on sworn testimony and basically said, oh yeah, we can tell you where he's been. We can't tell you where he is today. But they sat and just delineated this remarkable sort of map of him having just been moved around, like I say, like a chess piece in plain sight, but under the sort of sorriest of conditions, like a crappy little Yugo, and having to go sleep almost like couch to couch with these loyalist families. And the guy clearly seemed like a pain in the ass, huge personality. So I was so struck by that. And then they said at one point, yeah, they moved him into his own apartment, and he didn't want a security detail. All they gave him were phone cards, groceries, and a maid. And so my storyteller brain went nuts. I thought, well, okay, who is the maid? This guy is paranoid, is imperious. How did he trust her? Was she pre-vetted? And what was that relationship? Because the guy clearly was a social animal and needed to truly subjugate people, investigate people, interrogate them. So that struck me. There was another in that region, in Belgrade, named Radovan Karadzic. He he was hiding in plain sight as a spiritual healer. He had a cable access show, and the world was looking for him. So the the journey of these fugitives, just I found, excuse me, endlessly compelling. And it was when I read that one of their, in this case, Milošević's daughter, after the wars, had taken her own life with his service pistol when she found out the truth of his actions during the war. That's when I realized that there was a story I wanted to write, and that I was going to write the story of a man trying to vicariously have the relationship with his own daughter that he never got to have because of his own actions, and he still refuses to take responsibility for them. So that's how it leapt from the truth of what was going on there in the Balkans to this little dark fable.
And I'm curious, and clearly you're very passionate about this story and really falling in love with this story. And I'm curious, as you're sort of going down this rabbit hole, starting to form this story, did you reach out to some producers or some distributors to kind of find out if this was an idea that might have some, market potential? How does that factor into, this idea as you're working on the project?
You're assuming I'm far too adult to do that. No, I have to say, for better or worse, it's the only way I know how to work. It was true. The films that I've made, that I've written, Moonlight Mile, 10 Items or Less, Steven Spielberg said it once, it's like when you have the ghost of an idea, you have to go and chase it and capture it. And so I hate to say I worry about marketability later, but it's essentially true. What I know is if I'm passionate about something, because I make these movies and I know how long they take to make. If I'm passionate, it's going to sustain me through the unbelievable marathon that is making a movie. And if I care enough about it, I love going to the movies. I'm a big moviegoer. I'm a big audience of many kinds of stories. And I have to believe, every filmmaker has to believe that if I'm passionate about this, it's going to connect. It may be a specific audience. It may be another part of the audience that doesn't. But I just... otherwise, I don't think I would feel empowered to do what I do. And so, no, I went off and wrote. I couldn't write it right away because I was off making another film, but I had it still been waiting to go write it. And then essentially my process is more, to me, the title of the other podcast is Selling and Packaging Your Screenplay. Because as a filmmaker these days, especially, that's really your next move. So I write what I know I believe in, and then that lets me aggressively pursue talent, because there's really no way to put these movies together today without talent, whether it's for foreign pre-sales or even for the world of Netflix or otherwise. So I write something I can stand by. I can sit in a room with Ben Kingsley, look him in the eye, and he'll know my passion. I can speak to the screenplay with hopeful intelligence. And then together we go off and try to find that financing, which is the moment of reckoning, as you're talking about, like who thinks it's marketable or not. But I looked toward films like, I knew this would be definitely more of, if you will, an art house movie. It's more selective, character-based, more of the lives of others or more of the reader. Then it's not an action film. It's not Taken. It's not one of those. So I did believe, for the right price, and this again is where as a filmmaker I can help control that. I really put a number in my head on what I think the film can bear in terms of cost versus what it will, how it will play out in the world. So 10 Items or Less, my film, we make for $2 million, because I know I'm going to try to limit the exposure, because it's again a more playful, more character-driven art house film, and this as well we really worked to do incredibly reasonably, just on passion.
I'm curious, this is sort of more of a tactical question. When you have this sort of passion project, when you have a passion project like An Ordinary Man, do you have multiple projects that you're working on that are passion projects that you're pushing sort of down the field at the same time? Or do you just basically grab onto the project you're most passionate about and you just try and hammer that home and you don't stop until you get it produced?
Yeah, I do wish I was more the former, and I wish it was a case of air traffic control, and you know, many irons in the fire. It's rarely that case with me. I am a sort of monogamous when it comes to just my focus, and I think it's how I get my movies made. It's again, at times it's trickier, but that was the case with Moonlight Mile. Now it may take a few years in the process, and so what that means is I'm working hard to get that film made. Now there may be another film, another script that comes along, the timing is right for, and I take a step to the left and go make that film. That was true of City of Angels, actually, because Moonlight Mile, I had written that script prior, but that opportunity came along, and I was still trying to put together the cast and financing for Moonlight Mile. But I don't. I have yet to really, like, I've got a new original film that I'm in the middle of trying to, as we say, package, trying to put my cast together for that piece, and I don't have another that I'm essentially shopping at the same time. I'm kind of all in, and I think somehow that focus helps me. It's mental. It's also somehow it's communicated to the community. Like, this is the film he is bent on making, cares passionately about it. The cast know that I'm not jumping from meeting them on this to another project that I've also written. I was talking about this once with Bob Zemeckis. We were like, you know, if we were smart, we would have many irons, but we go movie by movie.
Yeah. How can people see An Ordinary Man? Do you know what the release schedule is going to be like?
Yeah, absolutely. So the film is opening a week from Friday. It's opening a week from tomorrow in 10 cities, in major city markets, L.A. and New York and Chicago, Seattle, and I'm forgetting a few. But the film is being released by Saban, and actually if one goes onto the Saban website, I think it'll list all of the theatrical markets. So the film goes out theatrically, and day and date it will be available VOD, and I think all of the great major VOD outlets one would have through local cable or local dish, I think. So it will be available day and date. So both experiences, I of course hope people who are in a market that can see it on screen, because I'm very proud of the work on screen. I think it's a pretty compelling visual story up when it's big. But yeah, it'll be week from Friday.
Perfect. Well, Brad, I really appreciate you coming on and talking with me today. Good luck with this film.
Thank you so much. Thrilled. And thanks so much. And thanks for your audience. Appreciate it.
Thank you. We'll talk to you later. A quick plug for the SYS Screenwriting Analysis Service. It's a really economical way to get a high-quality professional evaluation on your screenplay. When you buy our 3-pack, you get evaluations at just $67 per script for feature films and just $55 for teleplays. All the readers have professional experience reading for studios, production companies, contests, and agencies. You can read a short bio on each reader on our website, and you can pick the reader who you think is the best fit for your script. Turnaround time is usually just a few days, but rarely more than a week. The readers will evaluate your script on 6 key factors: concept, character, structure, marketability, tone, and overall craft, which includes formatting, spelling, and grammar. Every script will get a grade of pass, consider, or recommend, which should help you roughly understand where your script might rank if you were to submit it to a production company or agency. We can provide an analysis on features or television scripts. We also do proofreading without any analysis. We will also look at a treatment or outline and give you the same analysis on it. So if you're looking to vet some of your project ideas, this is a great way to do it. We will also write a logline and synopsis for you. You can add this logline synopsis service to an analysis, or you can simply purchase this service as a standalone product. As a bonus, if your screenplay gets a recommend or gets a consider from one of our readers, you get to list the screenplay in the SYS Select database, which is a database for producers to find screenplays and a big part of our SYS Select program. This is a new service, but we've already got producers in the system looking for screenplays. As a further bonus, if your script gets a recommend from one of our readers, your screenplay will get included in our monthly Best of newsletter. Each month we send out a newsletter that highlights the best screenplays that have come through our script analysis service. This monthly newsletter goes out to our list of over 400 producers who are actively looking for material. So this is another great way to get your material out there and into the hands of producers who are looking for material. So if you want a professional evaluation of your screenplay at a very reasonable price, check out www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/consultants. Again, that's sellingyourscreenplay.com/consultants. On the next episode of the podcast, I'm going to be interviewing writer-director Fritz Baum. He just did a fantasy thriller film called Wildling, starring Liv Tyler. We talk about that film, how it all came together, and we also talk about his early days in the business and how he got to the point where he is now directing feature films like Wildling. So keep an eye out for that episode next week. Anyway, that's the show. Thank you for listening.